everyone. Happy Monday. It is me, Jessica, your book host, guru, fantastic, awesome person who reviews books for your enjoyment and for mine, of course. This is another episode of The Bookseller, and this is all brought to you by Eventide Entertainment. I did not have a show last week. I had some family emergency go on. My grandmother passed away. So unfortunately, I just did not have the time to sit down and read a full book. But I'm here now, and I'm happy to be back talking to you guys again. I am terribly sorry for missing a show. I don't think I would have been in a very good headspace to give you a fun review or just to even know what I'm talking about. But we're here, and we have a really awesome book, thank God, because the last book review, which was, if you didn't hear that, and then she was gone, that book was terrible. And after reading that book, I just thought to myself, oh my gosh, this book is going to put me into a reading slump. I'm going to have no motivation to read. I'm going to be angry at everything. Angry at every book I try to read. I'm going to pick it apart. And I was really, really nervous, guys. I didn't think that I was going to be able to get myself excited to read again after reading that shit show of a book. If you have not listened to that episode, please give it a shot. It's last week's. That book, I cannot understand still why it has the high ratings it does. Blows my mind. And then there's other books out there that have way less reviews. Like Memoirs of a Geisha has a lower rating than that book that I reviewed last week. I just don't understand what is happening to the book world sometimes. So, we have an awesome book this week. Ladies, gentlemen, kids, toddlers, babies, whoever is listening. This week was phenomenal. I mean, I just can't even get over how happy I am that I got to read this and how excited I am to buy it, to read it again, to just experience that pure joy that I have. So, what book is it? It's Circe by Madeline Miller. That's a happy sigh. So this is a standalone book. It is an adult fantasy, and it is in the subgenre of mythology. And for those of you that might recognize the name, she also did a book a couple years ago called The Song of Achilles, also kind of keeping in with that tradition of Greek mythology. And she is amazing. I read Song of Achilles last year when I was in a really awesome class that I'll kind of get into. But I just thought her world building, bridging that gap between having history and fantasy and combining that and giving us just awesome book storytelling. I don't think I'm quite forming the words properly, but Greek mythology is so much fun to learn about. I've always loved it even as a child, and this book is kind of going along with that tradition of her last book. Her last book, Song of Achilles, was about Achilles and his life, and we've all heard about the myths about him, hopefully in school. I have watched documentaries. I'm very much obsessed with Egypt, Greek mythology, medieval history, the Tudor era, so I really love history, and I especially love ancient history. So for me, this book is definitely right up my alley. I will say right now, if you love history and you also love fantasy, this might be the book for you, for real. It is so awesome what she does. So with Song of Achilles, because she gave us kind of Achilles' story of his life, we obviously don't know Achilles as a historical figure as you read in books right now. or in textbooks, history books in the US of A. It's really all about myth and ancient history. Was he a real man? Is this just a story that we've heard passed down through the ages? Well, what Madeline does is she brings that myth to life, but also gives you a description of the character to kind of make them real. Gives them complete flesh out characterization of their wants, their needs, their likes, their dislikes. She is such a powerful character builder. Every single character in every book thus far, 2 books I've read from her, are completely fleshed out. All right, we're getting a little carried away. I'm sorry about that. I'm just super excited. So if you've read Song of Achilles, you've heard of it, give it a shot. Also give this book a shot, Circe. So let's talk about Circe, okay? Before we get into more of my obsessive happy review, I just so happy that this book changed my life, guys. Okay. Serious time. So this is a standalone, fantasy, Greek mythology, adult, pretty awesome. It is a hardcover coming at 394 pages, so it's not a dense book. When you think of history books or ancient history mixed in with fantasy, you think, oh my gosh, dense, really difficult to read, really hard to understand. It is a smaller book, so it is easier to get through and isn't as dense as those history books that we all loved to hate in school. So the rating for this is pretty high. On Goodreads, it's a 4.4, and on Amazon, it's a 4.7. For the most part, I've seen either 5 or 4-star reviews and very little 1 to 2-star reviews. I haven't really read why people are giving this a low rating. I'm honestly not 100% sure. I think maybe just people don't like the character, which is fine. We all have our preferences, right? But everyone agrees hands down that the writing is phenomenal. So this was published April 10th of this year, so it's very recent. My library, I had to reserve it, and it actually had to get sent or shipped from another library. So I did have to wait a little bit of time to be able to receive it at my library. It's actually due right now. I'm still holding on to it because I've read it twice, and I bought the audiobook. And I also think sometime in July, probably on my next paycheck, I'm going to buy this book. That's how freaking happy I am. So, like I said, she is the author of Song of Achilles, which was a very huge book. Either people loved it or loved to hate it. And it is something that I have not seen in this genre before. I think that that's part of it, why I'm so obsessed and happy. I love Greek mythology. Like I mentioned, ancient history is where it's at for me because it's so cool to think that this is how people believe, like what the gods and the myths and these stories that they believed in so long ago. And now it almost feels like a completely different age. It feels like fantasy sometimes. And so to be able to bridge that gap where we get the ancient history piece, but then also being able to flush out these characters that we only know in myths and actually give them history, give them depth, give them wants and needs, it really helps to almost make them real. And that's really exciting for me. Last year, if you guys remember, I did a review on American Gods, which I was also excited about because of the class that I took in college, which was Greek mythology. I am huge into mythology, like I've said, and I even took one of my electives was Greek mythology. I learned how to speak some Greek. I learned about all the myths, all the figures, how they interweave, how many people Zeus has slept with, the whole 9 yards. And I loved that class. It was probably hands down my favorite class I've ever taken in my entire life. I loved it. That's when I got inspired to read Song of Achilles. And just from there, I have been digging my claws into documentaries, books, anything to do with Greek mythology. So when I read Song of Achilles, I knew from reading that, because I bought it when it was in paperback, that she was writing another story, and this time on Circe. For those of you that want to know the Greek pronunciation of Circe. It is Circe. Pretty cool. We're not going to say that, though, because that's very not traditionally how we speak nowadays. So we're going to say Circe, but at least you know her name in Greek is actually Circe. And yeah, so Circe, or Circe, that we know her to be, was the woman in the Odyssey. She was the witch stranded on that island that Odysseus fell onto or got, stranded upon, and had an interaction with her. She is known for her witchcraft and her herbs and flowers and basically turning men or people that kind of hurt her or made her, or she just wants like a companion, she turns them into animals. So this island that she's living on is completely created of multiple different animals, all sorts of creatures and flowers and herbs that she uses to explore her witchcraft. In Greek mythology, she's someone to be feared. She's very tricky. A lot of gods are afraid of her, and that was part of the reason why she was put on this island, was because the gods Zeus feared what she was capable of, because it was not normal for a goddess of sorts, she is immortal, to be able to have these kinds of powers. That's kind of her myth place. She's very good at witchcraft. She has some roles in the Minotaur, with the Golden Fleece, Jason the Golden Fleece, with Odysseus, and more, as you'll find out when you read this book. So, with that said, let's take a quick 1-minute break, talk about what we have to offer here at Eventide, and then we'll get into the description, the plot, characters, writing, and give you my overall review. Make sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you in a minute.
You know, there's nothing quite as satisfying as a good conversation with intelligent company. Join comedian Don Smith every week as he sits down and talks with comedians, actors, filmmakers, writers, and everyday schmoes. It's The Life with Don Smith, Wednesdays at noon on 106.9 FM, and now available on the Eventide Entertainment podcast feed every Friday on Spreaker, YouTube, and iTunes. Wednesdays on Eventide, Robert Yetter and Mike Shea sit down and throw albums at each other, talking about them, picking them apart, ripping them a new one. All different artists, all different genres, all different levels of suckage. It's Track Record, Wednesdays at 9 a.m. on the Eventide podcast feed. For more information, go to eventideent.com.
All right. I realize that I have to tone it back a little bit. I'm kind of rambling and getting a little excited about this book, but I have not had a book that I've been so happy about, so excited about, and something I'm passionate about. I love this subject. So again, if I'm a little rambly and a little too overstimulated, I'm so sorry. Please just understand that it comes from a very happy place. And it just felt really good to read something that made me kind of escape for a little bit, especially given that my grandmother just passed away. So I think in some ways I kind of clung onto this book as being something that brought a lot of happiness to my life in a time that I was feeling a lot of sadness. So I will tone it back a little bit, but just know this book rocked my socks. So with that said, let's get into the description. In the house of Helios, god of the sun and mightiest of the Titans, a daughter is born. But Circe is a strange child, not powerful like her father, nor viciously alluring like her mother. Turning to the world of mortals for companionship, she discovers that she does possess power, the power of witchcraft, which can transform rivals into monsters and menace the gods themselves. Threatened, Zeus banishes her to a deserted island, where she hones her oculate craft, tames wild beasts, and crosses paths with many of the most famous figures in all of Greek mythology, including the Minotaur, Daedalus and his doomed son Icarus, the murderous Medea, and of course, wily Odysseus. But there is danger, too, for a woman who stands alone, and Circe unwittingly draws the wrath of both men and gods, ultimately finding herself pitted against one of the most terrifying and vengeful of the Olympians. To protect what she loves most, Circe must summon all her strength and choose, once and for all, whether she belongs with the gods she is born from, or the mortals she has come to love. Okay, so that does sound intriguing. Like I said, this book is wonderful in the sense that Circe, or Chiarche, is a mythological figure. We don't know her history really. What we hear in Greek mythology is very basic. We don't get like a fleshed out character. We just know she's menacing, vengeful, and some people fear her. But in this book, we kind of get to understand her from when she was born throughout her life. And she's very much woven into the story in such a way that you don't realize how much of a role she plays in so many of these monsters that, like, all the humans and mortals feared. A lot of the sea monsters and, like, the Minotaur. She had a role of helping, creating something, banishing. She is a very powerful woman, and to be able to have a story that completely fleshes her out, even if it's made up. This is a made up person. Yes, Circe was believed in very, very long ago, but to most of us now, she is a fantasy character. So it's okay for her to be given a history, even if it's made up. We don't know what her whole story was. Maybe back then they actually did have a fleshed out story of her. And I know for a fact that Madeline, the author, does do a great deal of research. So a lot of her characterization and the way she fleshes out the character, I do believe is taken into a lot of research, but she also takes her own creative license and liberties to create her into a remarkable character. So the plot basically revolves around Circe, and in this book, the whole story is told entirely from her perspective. She's born without beauty and charm of her mother. A lot of her family kind of look at her as like the ugly one. She just is different. Her voice isn't as glorious and beautiful. Her hair isn't gold like her mother's. And she's just not like her other siblings. Eventually, she is exiled to an island to live in solitude because they come to find out that she is indeed capable of witchcraft. And a god or an immortal that has that kind of power is very dangerous to the gods themselves, and that's why they fear her and send her to exile. So in this story, like we said, you find out all these different myths and what role she played in them. You also get to find out how she stumbled upon her witchcraft, why she feels a certain way towards mortals. She's just very, very remarkable and very awesome to read about because this story has history elements, fantasy elements, magic, and just overall stellar writing. I mean, the prose in this is beautiful. Even if you find this boring, you will still be like, wow, this is really nicely written. And that's, to me, a telltale marker of a brilliant world builder and character creator. So the whole book is on Circe, and she is hands down an amazing, amazing character. She is a character who seems to have evil intentions and little motivation, but we actually find out that she is in several stories and she has way more of a more motivation than we originally thought she did. She's proud, but not overly proud. She is true to herself, even when she doesn't know who she is or what she is capable of. She actually evolves throughout the book over time, and she actually makes her weaknesses evolve with her. And in spite of everything, she never forgets what it is to be weak or having weaknesses. And I think that is one of her greatest strengths, because she identifies, yes, this is where I struggle with, but you know what? I'm going to turn my weakness into my biggest strength. So, really commendable. She is very aware of her situation and what that completely entails, and she is able to mark her own path, carve her own path. And she is an incredible character. Hands down, one of the best characters I've ever read in a book. So we get a lot of side characters or minor characters that we all read about in myths, but they also get a lot of character development, even for the brief amount of times that you sometimes are interacting with this character in the book. They are so fleshed out. You know their motivations, who they are, what they dream of, like what they look like. It is so descriptive without being overwhelming that it just paints a completely clear picture in your head. And for each character, even the sideline characters, even the ones that are so minor to the story, you feel a certain way about them. The author is amazing at her characters. The world building, the writing was amazing. I am so flipping impressed with this. I cannot believe that a book that would be history and mythology can be so dang interesting. I loved this. I bought the audiobook for this because I started listening to it a little bit. The narrator that they chose for that is phenomenal. So yes, that was worth for me to buy the audiobook. And I also plan on buying my own copy of this once I do return my copy to the library. I've been holding on to it because I just love it. And I know I need to give it back so other people can experience it. But honestly, guys, if you were to read a book this year, a fantasy book, this is the one I would suggest you pick up. It is amazing. The writer is incredible. She is brilliant. She's creative. She's just one of the best authors, I think, of our generation right now. And I'm just so in awe of her. And this really hits me in a place where I am excited to see what else she creates. I hope that she continues on this path. It doesn't even have to be just Greek mythology. If she could just go into myths and be able to flesh them out to the point where we actually come to understand and love or hate the characters involved in these myths that we grew up listening to, I would absolutely love that. And I think that there's a market for her and an audience like myself that will just buy everything she writes. From now on, I don't need to go to the library to check out her books. I am buying every single book she writes. She is so good. I am so impressed, and I'm so excited to see what she comes up with next. So, what's my rating? Can you take a guess? 5 out of 5. That's right. This was the best book thus far of the year for me. So happy. I can't wait for you guys to give it a shot. It's been out for a couple months, so I hope this isn't too late to get you excited. If you're into history, if you love Greek mythology, check it out. You won't be disappointed. Please follow me on Goodreads and let me know what you think of this book or other books that I have reviewed. I have a couple books coming up. We're going back to YA. I'm so sad. This book was so good, but I must carry on. So please let me know what you think. You can email me, Goodreads me. There's all sorts of ways you can find me. I would love to get to know you and we can talk about books. Thank you, and I will see you next Monday, readers. Stay tuned and check this book out. I guarantee it'll be worth it.